Megan Edwards of Focus Communications, and today we're getting another company update from Trigon Metals, which trades on the Toronto Venture Stock Exchange under the symbol TM. And joining me today, we have President and CEO Jed Richardson. Jed, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Megan. Good to be here.
So, Jed, for those who are new to the company, could you give us a brief overview of Trigon Metals?
Sure. So, Trigon is about really African copper production, and why that's really important is as much as we're focused on electrification of transportation and zero emissions, and how copper plays an important role, and that's going to be a real driver of demand of copper going into the future. Where I think a lot less attention has been paid, but almost more important, is where is that copper coming from, and what's evolving in the copper market. Historically, like for the past 30 years, most of the world's coppers come from Chile and Peru, and those are increasingly hard places to be operating, whether it's strikes or lower grade resources, or just mines coming to the end of their lives. That is becoming the theme in Latin American copper production. Africa, however, is where there's a real opportunity for the world to grow its production. And while most of us will know of the DRC as a big copper producer, you also have production coming out of Zambia. But where we are as a company for Trigon, we're focused in on what I think are some really high quality places to be doing business. We're in Namibia, which has a long history of mining, leading diamond producer, one of the world's biggest uranium producers, and then we're now operating the only copper mine there. But there's lots of potential for that to grow. And then we're also in Morocco. So I'll just touch on that quickly, where we are in Morocco. This is a part of the company that we haven't spent a whole lot of time focused in on, but I think is really potentially transformative. We're exploring in a project called Silver Hill, because historically that's what was mined there. But we have had great results for copper exploration there, where we're now looking at a target that's over 4 kilometers long, 1.5 kilometers wide, and we're growing that as a new discovery in really just a great place to work. And you could already see some examples of that in other Canadian listed companies like Aya Gold and Silver. But our main operation is Kombat in Namibia.
Right, and it's been a busy few months for the company, where we've seen production and exploration updates from your Kombat project in Namibia. Now that the production has restarted, could you perhaps provide a recap of the history of the mine?
Sure. Now, really, the history of Kombat dates over 100 years, but the mine itself was built by Gold Fields and operated for over 45 years, built in like the 1960s. Now, it is because of that's given us a really big head start. We have a lot of infrastructure that was put in place for us. We estimated at over $150 million of infrastructure. So 3 working shafts, 2 ramps into the underground, a mill, all of the mine services buildings, like things that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars for us to do, and have slowed a lot of the projects, are not concerns for us at Trigon, because they were already in place for us. Yeah.
So on the production side, can we highlight any expected production targets for the year?
Absolutely. Right now, we are just starting mining. It's mainly strip that we're doing right now, moving waste. Last month, we moved about 124,000 tons of material. We've already moved to over 200,000 tons, 220,000 tons actually, right now. We've got 362 workers on site. Can't forget the 2. doing the mining. We're setting up the mill right now. We invested about $12.5 million last year upgrading the mill, but we're now doing all the site prep and getting ready and clearing the run of mine ore pad to get the mill running at the end of July, and then we will hit targeting commercial production by the end of September. So a lot's happening. We're expecting to produce just under 4.5 million pounds of copper this fiscal year. Full run rate for our open pit will be around 7 million pounds of copper, and then next year we'll have production starting from our underground, and we're targeting like run rate of over 22 million pounds of copper from the underground. That we've done a fair bit of that work already, getting ready for the underground, and we have a lot of the staff on site for the underground as we're queuing up to install new ventilation. We've got the pumps going into place, and so it's a beehive of what do you call it, activity at site right now.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about growth. Since the company paused ops in Q3 2022, you've returned a number of significant copper intercepts. Can you walk us through some of the results and highlight what these might mean for Trigon's production moving forward?
Sure. Like we've got 12 years of mine life and resource, and the results that we've been putting out have been in and around the planned open pits, and it's really supporting that existing growth. I think I'd say our best result was what we just put out last week, and this is from an area we call it ore capping, or E600, where we drilled 76 meters at 1.5% copper with about 9 grams per ton silver. And this is at surface. This will be part of the open pit, and the ore capping or E600 area is really the heart of our planned open pit mines. We'll actually have 4 different pits that we're operating from. The largest of will be the E600. So it was great to drill that hole, communicate to the market exactly what we're dealing with, and do note this is still our surface mineralization. We underground will be looking at higher grades and longer intercepts. So there's a lot of mineralization here and a lot of exploration potential.
In a recent press release, I noticed you mentioned exploration drilling outside of the Kombat mining permit. Could you walk us through some of the potential upside targets within this 35-kilometer mineralized corridor?
Sure. So yeah, that's. I'm glad you asked that, because that's where I was going. So while the drilling that you've seen so far really supports the resource that we already have established, next month we'll start drilling in the extreme west of the property in an area we call the Grossetavy. And then we also are looking to move a rig to the east of the property to an area called Schlangenthal. Both of these would be new areas where our geologists have showed that there's a lot of copper mineralization at surface. Actually, in Grossetavy, there's even some ancient workings. But what is most important about these is success in these areas would be used to grow our production profile. So right now we've got that visibility to the 30 million pounds from the open pit and the underground, and then an addition to that, another 30 million pounds that we could add from our assets far west. If we have success in Grossetavy and or success at Schlangenthal, resources there could be used to grow our production beyond that, right? So already our growth profile at 60 million pounds of copper, given today's copper price, we're looking at revenue of near $250 million. Now, if we have success in these limbs around the main mining area, we can grow our production beyond that and target more tons, more cash flow.
Mm-hmm. And based on your recent news flow, there appear to be some areas of interest around the planned open pits, East 400, East 600, and East 900. Are these potential sources for adding near-surface high-grade ore? And also, what are some near intermediate-term expansion plans for the company?
So yeah, so absolutely. So it's pictured on this slide. So where our last results were was East 600. Close just to the right of center on the slide that we're looking at. Where we've drilled, this is adding to what we already know is there. So we do have some resource at East 600, but what we've drilled extends that depth wise, and then a little bit to the west. We'll continue drilling in that area, but again, it's just supporting the mine plan. East 600, there's actually a lot of not East 600, sorry, East 900. There's a lot of potential for us to grow the resource there. So we do have a small resource already planned, East 900, but we can see the mineralization is extending, and there may be even some potential for East 600 and East 900 to become one larger pit, because we can see connections between the mineralization that we see in both areas. So as far as near-term growth, it's the growth that we have planned is to continue mining from the open pit and then bring on the underground. That's where the real growth happens. And so I'll just kind of refresh that. If you take a look at what we map out here as our production profile, and you see that the open pit in the pale color at the bottom, then the first stage of the underground, peaking at around 30 million pounds of copper in that kind of middle color, and then you see Asses Far West, and there, like conservative estimates is that adds 30 million pounds of copper, but it could add even more. And this is all growth that we can bring on in the next 2 to 3 years, just to situate people so they understand what Asses Far West is. If you look at this slide, you'll see Shaft 1 marked in the center, and that's where we'll start our underground mining. That is where our mill is. And then you can see the open pit to the right of that, marked by the little pyramids are indicating the waste piles that we'll be building. But then on the left of the slide, you can see a shaft kind of sitting by itself. That's Asses Far West. This was an 800 meter, 2,000 ton per day production shaft that was put in by our predecessor. Actually, never operated from, and while it was drilled, it was put in knowing that there was mineralization there. The resources were never drilled out. So this is really the big piece of growth that Trigon has beyond even what we're doing exploration-wise on the extensions around us. This Asses Far West is the kind of the golden carrot for Trigon, and the infrastructure is already there. Let's put this in context: 2,000 tons per day. The capacity of that shaft is 60,000 tons a month. Our mill capacity right now is only 30,000 tons a month. When we get into the open pit next year, we'll be growing it to 60,000 tons a month. And then Asses Far West represents another 60,000 tons a month of potential that we'll have. So there's that is a big piece of infrastructure that would be a bottleneck for most people operating, is that if we success growing the resource in that direction would be something that we'd have to put way out, because we'd need new infrastructure to do that. Our infrastructure is already in place there. and that is going to be where new resource and new tons come from, and really taking what a small operation now growing to a mid-tier operation, taking that into a really impressive level of production. Like I said, probably about a quarter billion dollars of revenue once we bring in assets far west.
And in January of this year, Trigon announced the acquisition of the Copper King extension at the Kombat Mine. You've recently announced the closing of this acquisition, and this significantly expands Trigon's landholding in Namibia. Can you provide us with an overview of this acquisition?
Sure. So this is something we've been working on for a few years, really. January marked a really key point for us where we were able to close and finalize the acquisition. And then what just occurred last week was a granting of renewal of all of the permits there by the Mines Commission in Namibia, which now gives us free access to go in and do the exploration. So in total, it's now gives us 35 kilometers of strike length, and all along that strike length, we have copper showings. As I touched on earlier, we're looking to move a rig to Grossetave next month, but there's a lot of work ahead of us just following up on these targets, and that provides a great opportunity for us to grow. Like ultimately, I do believe we'll be operating in this valley as like its own little copper district, right? With multiple operations, probably multiple open pits, potentially a couple or a few underground operations, all feeding a central mill, and we have all that kind of growth baked in for our shareholders.
Now, before we let you go, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners who are following the company's story?
Sure. Right. Like one is kind of what's happening with copper right now. We've been getting our momentum going as we get the operations, the operation up to speed over the last couple of months. Copper took a bit of a check back as the world was trying to make sense of what's happening economically, but I don't really think copper can be stopped here. We're back up to 390 today. And with commentators around the world expecting copper to continue its move upwards, I think whether or not the world economy sorts itself out, the copper price is going to appreciate, and Trigon is in a perfect place to take advantage of that, right? With new production in a market that's going to need it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jed, and we look forward to having more updates from Trigon in the near future.
Okay. Thanks, Megan.